Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the Public Works Podcast. My name is Joseph Blackman. Today, got a treat for you. His name is Alexander Mockos, and he is the Northwest Wastewater Practice Leader for Brown and Caldwell. Alex, or Alexander, say what's up to everybody.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me, Joe.
For sure, man. So come on now. Northwest Wastewater Practice Leader. Like the Northwest could be like northwest of the world or the Milky Way galaxy. So like tell us what your title means, what you do, what you're over, what you're under, like kind of what's all involved with your title.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, Northwest, first of all, that's Oregon, Idaho, and Washington.
Okay.
At least that's what Northwest means in Brown Caldwell's eyes. So yeah, I mean, I'd say first and foremost, I'm a civil engineer. I've worked my whole career in the water wastewater field. I've served as a kind of designer, project manager, program manager. I've had the good fortune to work about 50% of my career on the private side in consulting and 50% over on the utility side, so on the owner's side. Right now, for the past a little bit over a year, I've been working back in consulting with Brown and Caldwell. The Northwest wastewater area practice lead. What does that mean is, I work with my colleagues here in the Northwest to help identify and win and deliver wastewater solutions for clients here in the Northwest. So that's really what that means.
Okay. So now I get it. But it's interesting. I kind of looked at your LinkedIn and I saw your career trajectory. You've been around some different places. You've been on the public side. You came back to the dark side, the private side. So tell us in more detail about your career path. Because I always envision a 19-year-old and they're like, how can I be in Alexander's shoes one day? And then maybe they could construct or use your path to set their own path. So tell us what your, trajectory was like from high school to where you're at today.
Yeah, from high school, I would say I went into college knowing that I wanted to be an engineer. I actually wanted to go structural.
Okay.
But then I got exposed to wastewater engineering through a wastewater lab and a professor there who's teaching still is the head of the wastewater lab, Eric Coates. So shout out to him. He got me involved with wastewater treatment. Quickly found that I really love practicing in the water and wastewater sort of sphere, and decided to go get my master's at the same University of Idaho, and where I sort of learned a lot about the process side of wastewater engineering. From there, I knew I wanted to get real world experience, and I know I wanted to become a good practitioner. So I joined a consulting firm out here in the Puget Sound. And I was very intentional about wanting to kind of understand each facet of engineering consulting, which for folks, for other 19-year-olds out there, consulting touches sort of all aspects of a project life cycle, from sort of planning, like identifying what your problem is, coming up with potential alternatives. That's generally called planning. Then when you select an alternative and further define it, you're designing it, you're creating the drawings and specifications so that then it can be bid and constructed. So then there's also construction management. And after it's constructed, you commission it so you can learn about commissioning and getting it started and running. And then there's operating and maintaining it. So I was kind of really intentional in trying to work on each of those facets throughout my early career. And I think that's an important thing for young engineers entering the industry.
Sure. And one thing you just did there, what I really, really, really appreciate, is you just took me through all the different facets of consulting or the engineering phase, because you hear like, oh, we're a design build company. Oh, we're a managing or a operating company, engineering firm. And I'm like, what does this stuff even mean? So now, like, thank you for doing that, because you made it clear to myself and to all the listeners, like what exactly certain companies or certain, I guess, focuses for engineering firms, what they do within the, I guess, a project scope, it's so to say. So thank you for doing that. And then also, you said a word in there which I kind of want to pause on for a little bit. And the word was practice. And whenever somebody thinks of like practice outside of like sports, you think of doctors, like, oh, he has a practice or he's practicing and this and that. So you said the word practice in water engineering. So tell us why it's I guess labeled as a practice, and then what that means to you and what that should mean to, I guess, the industry.
Yeah, it's a it's a process of continual learning and progression, and innovations building on themselves. So what I think a lot of people should understand is that uh, I've been in the field practicing, I like to say, for 15 years. And
Nice.
I'll tell you, the tools at our disposal for doing design, for example, have evolved enormously.
Yeah.
uh, when I first started, 3D design was a new thing, and they were kind of like stick figures of early treatment plants and pipes. Now we live in a world where majority of projects are done in really advanced 3D models, where you can do virtual fly-throughs of facilities way before they're ever built.
Wow.
And so I like to call it practice because you're honing your skills throughout, and you're leveraging new technology as it comes on board. And while it's also learning expertise, is as you address different problems, you come into contact with a lot of different professionals. Um, a treatment plant is not just touched by engineers; it's touched by operators, it's touched by planners, it's touched by executives, and as you start working with those folks, you start understanding what they value and their criteria, and that hones you as an engineer, and becoming better and creating higher value for your clients.
Sure, sure. I love that because we're all, to a certain extent, we're all still practicing. None of us have really figured it all out for anything, whether it's like, let's say, marriage or parenting or basketball, anything. Like you're always figuring stuff out. So
So,
actually, and you're a family man also, and I like to ask this question in this way because it makes sense. Like one of your kids comes home, they have this piece of paper, and they're so proud of like the project they did at school, and they want you to put it on the refrigerator because they're proud of it, right?
mhm.
So what would be the proverbial or the, I guess, the metaphorical project for Alexander? What would you want to put on your refrigerator? Something that you took part in that you'd go, I want everybody to look at that because I thought it was cool and I was a part of
I there's if are you asking me to pick one project or
it.
one
One
program?
project.
I would say a project that I'm sort of most proud of is actually, it's not completed yet. It's
Okay.
being done by the city, but it's the Ship Canal Water Quality Project. It's the biggest environmental project the city of Seattle has ever uh, done.
Yeah.
And I was leading the program at the time that this project sat under. It was the Combined Sewer Overflow Reduction Program. And it was just, it, it had so many challenges because it was such a new thing, so big, so encompassing in terms of resources, that being able to work with the team members and steering it in the right direction to get it funded, designed, and to get the construction kicked off was such a heavy lift that I'm proud to have been a part of that, with the other team members, many of which are still there working on it. And the tunnel actually just finished boring, finished its sort of tunneling part of it
Okay.
about a couple months ago. So that's something that I'm really proud of.
Cool. Cool. Thanks for answering that. So let's say you're giving advice to a youngster, and the youngster asks you, Alexander, what would be the number one skill set that they should pick up along their journey to be successful as a wastewater practice leader? What would that be?
I think for both this position, but as a professional in general, in the water wastewater realm, I think that the number one skill is actually to practice deep listening. It's powerful. It sounds funny to say it, but it's a powerful communication tool or communication skill. And people are like, what does that mean, deep listening? I think, it's in a world where we're all trying to, communicate what our value proposition is as quickly as possible, or sell our product. And we talk a lot. You hear a lot of people talking a lot. I think starting off your conversations with folks by listening, being fully present in that moment, maintaining eye contact, looking at nonverbal cues as people communicate, sure that you're being empathetic in how you respond to folks while they are expressing their concerns or their problems to you, and really avoid interrupting and avoid judging. Those are some tips that I would give folks. It's really powerful when you're there talking for an hour with someone, and you maybe, if you were to, clock yourself, that you're the one that talked only 10 minutes. Is sort of, that served me incredibly well. And you asked me to pick one, so that's the number one.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Joe?
No, it 100%, because even like when all the sales books that I read, like selling is listening, it's not talking. Like you would think, you see on TV the guy is trying to be smooth and he's trying to talk and be cool, and like, no, dude, like shut up, listen. Because you know how it is. When people feel heard, then they feel like they're understood, or they feel like it's like, you ever had those conversations with somebody and she would say like, oh, you're such a good listener, or I like talking to you, and she did the talking for the majority of the time you hung out. You're like, well, I didn't even talk, but I listened. So yeah, it's that same respect. I couldn't agree more. The less I talk, the more deeper of a connection I feel with that other person, because I can tell they're deeply connected with it, which makes sense. All right. So speaking of talking, I need you to talk yourself up or talk yourself down, but I need a story from you. And the story of some time or when something went wrong under your watch, what you did to fix it, and then what lessons you learned from it to apply to your future career.
Yeah, that's a good one. There's a lot of things that have gone wrong under my watch. So I would say the one that stuck with me the most over the years is I was overseeing a large project that was undergoing some scope changes. Essentially, we had to change certain parts of the project, and it was increasing the costs dramatically. And we had to make some decisions that would make operating and maintaining what we were designing a lot harder for the crews that would have to actually go do that work when the project was built. And we also had a strong schedule driver, and I used sort of my positional authority to force a decision. And the decision was to, reduce costs and compromise operation and maintainability of the project in question. And that's something that we contend with a lot in engineering. So it's something that I would say, the reason I also think it's a good one to share is that I think a lot of engineers and professionals in this in water, wastewater face that decision, cost, scope, versus performance or operations and maintenance. But it ultimately, why was that? Why did that go wrong? Is it burned relationships with folks, and it really it taught me in the hard way that the success of a project is not necessarily the construction of that project within budget. It has to be a shared success for everyone that is participating in that project. And I would say that how I made that a positive was after that happened, we really stood back and thought about, well, how do we emphasize operations and maintenance criteria in early decision making, and started thinking of ways to include that in our process for evaluating projects, essentially giving more weight to their voice and more weight to that criteria. How could that be useful to other folks? I think at the onset of every project, it's good for a team to get together and have what I would call a chartering session, a session where you talk about your project goals and getting alignment from folks at the onset around what the goals of a project should be, and having the hard conversations at that time if they're needed, versus having them late in the game when inevitably someone will get hurt by that decision. So that's a simple way to solve it. And there's ways that you can find online on how to charter project meetings, or charter when you're creating a new program, how to do that. There's things that I could help people with as well. But anyway, that's an example, Joe.
Okay, and that kind of leads me. It makes me curious because you work for the city of Seattle, correct? And now you're doing a project with Brown and Caldwell with the city of Seattle, correct? That's the one you're proud of.
No, I'm not right now. I was just. I'm not working for the city. The project's still happening, is what I meant. Like it's still moving forward. That tunnel project. Yeah. But you
used to work for the city. So, and you talked about like shared investors or shared, people on each side of the table have to kind of work together. So since you've worked for a city, I'm not asking about the Seattle situation. Since you've worked for a city and now you do work for cities, would you advise that a youngster spend some time with the city to kind of learn the inner workings? Because when I first got into government sales, I didn't realize how slow it could be, how long things could take. And then when I actually gripped the bat and figured it out, I'm like, oh, I see why it takes this long, because a lot of things have to happen just before you get the green light on a project. So do you think you picked up some nuggets or some gems working at a city that help you out when you're on the engineering side?
Yeah, 100%. I would advise anyone to try private and public. I think there's a benefit to both if you try the other side at some point. From the public side, what I learned, and I think a lot of people learn from public side, is number one, you'll learn quickly how resource constrained public utilities are. And so when you then become a consultant, it's important that you understand timing, how hard it is maybe sometimes to move certain things forward. It's real, and the utilities are feeling that squeeze more and more as time moves on, I find. So you learn, like you said, about the bureaucracy. I would say, though, things that are really valuable if you become a consultant afterwards that you learn, though, on the public side, are how hard it is to fund projects and to get to a decision to do a project. That's a really challenging thing, and there's a lot of decision making that happens on the front end before a project even becomes a project. Often in consulting, you're sort of handed, hey, this is our problem, we need a project, go figure it out. Well, it took a while to get to that point, and understanding all the pieces would make you a better consultant if you understand what the front end is. I think also on the public side, you learn really what it means to deal with public, the ratepayers directly, and the weight that carries on project decisions. When you're plowing through a community with a big pipeline and interrupting access to people's homes, and you're the person that's on the phone dealing with those individuals whose lives have been impacted, it makes you think twice when you're a consultant on whether, hey, should I pick that alignment or should I pick another alignment, because it's going to cause a lot of disturbance to the public. You see how like what you learn there makes you a better person over in this field, and the same's the reverse. There's a lot from the consulting side around how to run projects efficiently, understanding where like big risks are in projects as you design them, that then you can carry back to your work on the public side and incorporate. So I think it's wise actually for people to do both.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. All right, so back to the concept of practicing. How does Alexander show up year after year better and better? What do you do intentionally and proactively to keep getting better at your job and your career?
This took me time to get to the point that I'm about to make. So this wasn't something that I would say I knew. I would say I probably started figuring this out 7 to 8 years in. So
okay.
First and foremost, just if there's a younger rising professional listening to me, know that it's okay that this isn't totally figured out, because it takes time and it's different for everyone. But I have got to this point where I like to establish 3 yearly goals for myself with clear metrics for each of them, and measure my progress against them fairly constantly. I think, I start off my days with no email for the first 2 hours. So that's like a very pragmatic thing. Okay.
Man, that's big.
First thing on that list of that day better be tied to one of those 3 yearly goals.
Really?
That's something that works for me. And then I'd like to assess myself, and then I ask also obviously my supervisor to assess me quarterly against those metrics that I mentioned earlier. So that's something that's really helped me, and honestly it helps you feel good about at year end, or as you're progressing, that you're incrementally eating away at it.
That's good.
And it took me a while, because there were times where I felt, am I making progress? Or you feel a little lost, right? And, ever since I started doing that, I would say it's actually helped me progress quicker and feel better about where I'm at. And the other item I would say is really request continuous feedback from your peers, if you're on the public side or on the private side, from your clients. Continuous feedback has been an enormous way that I've sort of advanced my skill set and feel like I've advanced my career. So those are some, I would say, practical suggestions, Joe.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the setting goals part is huge, because I think a lot of us, we get in these careers and like these things can take a lot of time for like one project, might be 2 or 3 years before you actually get something from start to finish. And you can look back and go, man, did I change as a person? Did I get better? Or did I just gain 3 pounds and took on some more consumer debt and maybe did 2 vacations? Or, you don't you don't know if you're actually getting better. But
Mhm.
I do like, and I don't want to ask you like, you don't have to show me what's in the sausage, but what would one of those goals look like? Again, not for you. It doesn't have to be one of your goals, but like, what would is it like? A revenue number? What does that look like?
Well, for me specifically in the job that I'm at, there's a one of the three is a revenue one, for
Okay.
example, want to achieve a certain amount of sales per
Yeah.
year, and obviously that's an easy one to measure, right? So metric on that is pretty easy. There's another one around developing our sort of enhancing our wastewater practice in the Northwest. That's like a little trickier, right? Like, how do you measure that? Well, you
Yeah.
could measure it in terms of number of practitioners or number of people within the organization that have leveled up from being sort of early adopters to become subject matter experts. It can be
Ah,
measured in terms of amount of trainings you're providing
okay.
or career development plans developed. You
Yeah.
see various ways, but that's one of the goals.
Yeah.
And third goal can be, strengthening your position in a particular sub discipline.
Yeah.
Those are what those could look like for a position like mine right now.
Gotcha. Okay.
And yeah, those are job specific goals, right? My personal career goal, which is actually what led me back into the private sector here at Brown and Caldwell, was
Yeah.
I really wanted to maximize my environmental impact.
Uh,
And the company Brown and Caldwell I'm at, we're sort of at the forefront of dealing with the biggest wastewater challenges.
wow.
And in particular in this region, the Puget Sound, there's a lot of work that's needed. The communities do an amazing job here of treating their wastewater. There's still a lot of work left to do, and this position allows me to really kind of work with clients and help set direction to really maximize environmental impact. So that's an example of how setting a career goal could drive
Yeah.
you to make a job change, for
Totally.
example.
Totally. I get that. Okay. Thank you for answering that. I was wondering what those goals look like. Were they like company specific or position or like personal? So I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
What would you say is one of the biggest misconceptions about your position? Like, let's say we asked your wife's best friend, like, what does
Mhm.
Alexander do all day? Like, what did he do for the community? What's this? These two last name companies he works for. Like, what does he do? What would she get totally wrong in answering that question?
Ooh, what would she would get wrong? She would probably, and a lot of people think of consultants that, for example, that we center our services around, like we design something. We're
Yeah,
designing a treatment plant, a
I
pipe,
can see that.
and we do that in spades, and we do that a lot. It's a core part of our business. I think, though, that what people miss in that is that's kind of going back to what I said at the very beginning. That's a slice of the pie of what consulting means and the value that we can bring. Consulting can be everything from the beginning of planning to afterwards commissioning and asset management, which is how you manage the whole life cycle of a project. And
Uh,
so that's a misconception that I think a lot of folks don't understand, that we can be a part of the whole life cycle of your water wastewater assets, and there's tremendous value and innovation that can come from us being a part of that whole life cycle.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And are you on the more of the business development side? Like, are you going out and hunting for customers, clients, or are you more on the project management where they're brought to you and you take it to fruition?
Yeah, I'm exactly 50-50. I'm 50%
Okay.
business development and we're and 50% project management, larger wastewater projects in the region. So it's
And
a model that our company sort of uses, call it seller doers, where it's important for you to do business development, keep in contact with clients, but it's also for you to keep honing your skills and keep developing the practice to also be to also be like a project manager or an engineer.
Yeah.
The company believes strongly in the value of that.
Okay. Because I mean, having been in sales, I know what it's like to have to keep a pipeline full enough so that you can get sales in the future. But I've never really been on like the service or like operations side to where I don't know how to build a truck. I know how to like troubleshoot it and service it a little bit, but like my focus is sales. So it's interesting that you're 50-50. Like, let's say you had to advise a youngster, he's fresh into, he's got a ton of energy. He's like, Alexander, I want to make a ton of money and I want to be the best, subject matter expert at this. Would you say, hey man, like, no, spend X amount of, like, let's say you have 8 hours a day or 40 hours a week. Would you say spend 20 on the biz dev side and then 20 on the project management? Or would you say, dude, just learn the customer base and spend 90% of your time like selling and just learning their problems, or like 90% of the time, like getting good at it. So in the future, you can, do better per sale. Like, what's the split?
If I had to define it, I guess in let's say different time segments in your early career.
Okay.
I would say, so 1 to 5 years of experience, be 80% on projects, 20% on business development.
Wow,
meaning,
okay.
Why is that, right? I mean, my opinion is you need to learn what you're doing to be good at selling what you're doing. And so I think emphasize on the learn that part, and then depending on what trajectory you want to go, right? If you love the doing, at our company, for example, there's great technical trajectories for you to stay in that if you want to remain a technical doer. But then if you want, there's also these options of going and doing more sales. And I think that typically around that 5-6 year mark, generalizing obviously, but it's very person specific, but that you can start expanding the percent of your time that you do sales.
Sure.
And that would be my advice.
Okay. No, I appreciate that, because you never know what industry requests what. Because sometimes the guy will say, dude, like, get out there, knock on as many doors as you can, because you'll learn the problems or the pains that they have so you can sell to them better in the future. And some industries like, dude, you got to know this product before you even talk to anybody. Because you're going to sound like an idiot if you're trying to sell somebody something you don't know anything about it. So thank you for answering that. Let's say everybody on the planet listens to this episode. Like, what should we listen for when we're out in the public for a problem that you can solve for that city or for that for that county or a potential customer? Like, what would an ideal customer be for you?
Well, an ideal customer would be sort of a customer that has clear goals and success criteria defined.
Yeah.
And that's no easy trait in general, with all the competing priorities that like utilities have. That's not an easy thing. But you're asking me what the ideal would be, and I'd say that's it. And that really understands, though, the innovation and productivity that can result by working hand in hand with a consulting firm. Why is that? Because I think sometimes consultants are seen kind of this, we'll use them, we'll use them as staff augmentation or to do that part of the thing that we can't. But if you use consultants as thought partners and helping really resolve the problems for you, there's such a potential. I've seen this on both sides. When you create these really powerful thought partnerships between the two, you really have these incredible spurts in either innovation or in productivity. So I would look for someone who has clear goals, success criteria, and knows what power can come from working together with consultants.
Sure. And I thought that also. Like I thought companies hire consultants to fill a void or fill a gap for
Hmm.
something that they did need to hire somebody for full time. They couldn't get
Hmm.
365 days out the person, but they need somebody to come in for a project and they hire a consultant. But the whole thought, that marriage of your side, their side coming together to work on a common goal, I could see how powerful that could be.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I always like to leave a space on the show for you to thank mentors that you had along your journey. And then also give a word of inspiration and motivation to your industry counterparts.
Yeah, I would say I've had a lot of I've had a lot of mentors, direct and indirect ones over the years, that I would thank. If a couple that I would sort of that stand out to me are two folks that I had the good fortune to work with at the city. Actually, one of them is Ben Murray. He's division director there in the planning and program management group. He's always pushed me to take on new challenges and to fail forward in the very real sense of the word. And you really only learn when you push yourself and that you're and through failure. And so I want to thank him for doing that. It's been a role model and a mentor to me like none other. The other is Keith Ward, also at the city. He's the executive of that Ship Canal water quality project that I was
Okay.
talking about, that tunnel. And he's really taught me by example, like what it takes to be a great leader and to run a high performing team. He's one that focuses, has taught me to focus on the importance of team culture and team health, and in ways that I've not seen anyone else do. And so I've been very appreciative of learning just by watching. And those are people that I feel, there's some people you work with or
Mm,
get exposed to that you feel like just propel you forward
mm,
immensely. And those two
yeah.
individuals are that to me. So
Multiplier.
those are the
Yeah.
two folks I'd like
Okay.
to shout out to.
And then what do you say out there to the other, I guess, wastewater engineers? They're fighting the same battles you're fighting. They're dealing with the same things you're dealing with. What do you say to keep them motivated, keep them inspired?
Yeah, I would say, you know, we're facing immense challenges in the water industry, and and maintaining clean waters and thriving communities is the challenge of the future in our industry. And I would say uh, I find motivation in my children. I have two young children now that it really drives me every day to try and increase environmental impact to the work that we
Mm,
do. So I don't know if that's a motivation to folks. I've just given an example of like
sure.
that's really what has 2x'd my motivation, as
Yeah.
I found that like I want these kids to be able to thrive and to be able to use the waterways and the lakes and the Puget Sound in the future, and that find that motivation, because it's really instrumental in how you show up and how well you're going to do in your career, because it
Sure.
people will gravitate towards you
Mm,
if you really are motivated and you have that passion.
yeah, I can see that. Let's say you're commissioned to put up a billboard, and this billboard is in the most trafficked area of Seattle. What ask of your community in regards to wastewater would you want to put on this billboard?
Wow. Uh, what ask of the community?
Yeah. Like if you had to say to everybody in the community, hey, help us out by doing X, Y, and Z, what would that be?
Okay, so
And not flushable wipes.
yeah, the flexible wipes is a good one. I would say my ask is spend the time to learn yourself and teach your children about the water cycle.
Mm,
And I uh, why I say that is, again, back to my son. I have almost 3-year-old son who's super interested in the work I do. And when I understood that he connected that the sewer water from the toilet required all this infrastructure to get to a treatment plant that then cleans the water that then the crabs that he likes to play with at the beach live in, that connection there, I could see really a light came on in his head around like the importance of cleaning water. And that was just explaining part of the cycle to him. And I think that would really change people's behaviors around a lot of things tied to water. So yeah, learn about the water cycle.
Okay. All right. Let's say I'm coming to Seattle and I text you ahead of time and I say, hey, Alexander, where can I go to get the best burger in town? Where are you going to send me?
Well, this is going to be a controversial thing that I'm sure some folks will call me out on later, but I like 8-ounce burger.
Okay.
And it's actually their own 8-ounce burger. It's just, I think it's called the signature burger, but it's just amazing. Second place, Lil Woody's, I think is also really good.
Okay.
You know, not cheap burgers, but not much in Seattle is cheap, but I'll say that those are really, really good burgers.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, man. Well, Alexander, thank you for hopping on the show. Thank you for sharing your wealth of information and knowledge with us. To all the listeners out there, make sure you share this with somebody who you think needs to hear it. Any final words before we get out of here?
I would just, we're the company I work for, Brown and Caldwell, is if you're looking to enter the field, or if you're a practitioner looking to want to join a company that's really driven to improving water quality and environmental outcomes for communities Northwest, like we're the place to be. I really believe that. We have great leadership, great career development opportunities, and it's just a great learning environment. So come, check out those positions or check out our website. It's brownandcaldwell.com.
Okay, good stuff. Well, once again, thanks for hopping on the show. This has been the Public Works Podcast, and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.